The brand new British event tank that just came out, the FV4030/3, is either extremely good or extremely bad, and it all depends on how you play it. But before I rate this vehicle, I'm going to tell you how to play it. When you're not hull down, you are one of the worst tanks on the battlefield, but as soon as you hide your hull from any enemies and it's just your turret peeking out, you are one of the best on the battlefield. Once you get into a hull down position, all you have to do is hold an angle and don't let the enemy team through. First up, we have speed. It has a max speed of 56 kilometers per hour forward and 37 kilometers per hour reverse. In this BR bracket, that's kind of average. There's nothing really special about the speed stat or anything, although I did notice it has a really good acceleration for how big of a tank it is. The immediate reverse acceleration is absolutely fantastic and goes hand in hand with you being hull down. That being said, there's nothing that really stands out when you look at this thing's speed stat. If anything, Russian tank designs are faster forward and NATO tank designs are faster in reverse. But that acceleration carries this thing, so I'm still going to give it a 7 out of 10. Moving over to agility, this is probably one of the heaviest tanks in this BR bracket. According to Gaijin, it weighs 62.5 tons. This is absolutely massive, kind of like your mother. It is also just a massive tank in general, so you're going to have a hard time kind of maneuvering around tight maps. But on the bright side, you do have pretty good neutral steering and you have good acceleration as previously mentioned. It's just this tank is extremely chunky and not meant to be agile whatsoever. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Moving over to offense, you do have a 120mm L11A5 cannon. It does feature a 2-plane stabilizer. It has first order ammunition, which makes the reload extremely quick for the first 3 reloads as long as you have the ready rack loaded. You do get access to L23 APFSTS with 410mm of pen, along with a smoke shell, a HESH shell, and an APDS shell that has a kilogram mass of 7.5. You also do come equipped with 2 7.62s, but those don't really matter against tanks. Your top round, the L23, is definitely not the best in this BR bracket, although it is pretty good at spalling. Meanwhile, your APDS that has 7.5 kgs of mass is extremely good at spalling. It is probably one of the best in this BR bracket. And with 300mm of pen on that APDS round, it is something to be scared of. While using this offensive armament in game, it necessarily wasn't overpowered or underpowered. You did have to aim though, and you did have to know how to aim. So if you've never played in this BR bracket before, you will struggle trying to pen enemy tanks. So for that reason, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for offense. Moving over to defense, this thing's turret cheeks are so good in this BR bracket. The amount of shots you can just tank and survive and take no damage whatsoever is actually insane. But that's kind of it for this thing's defense. All of the armor is concentrated on the turret cheeks. If you're not hull down, you are probably one of the weakest tanks on the battlefield because you have absolutely no protection. Like, there were times where I was literally getting front penned by autocannons. The defense is just really up to you guys, the drivers, to actually determine how good it is, because if you get hauled down, you're basically impenetrable at this BR bracket. But if you decide to rush in without paying attention where enemy positions are and you get caught out in the open, it's basically done for you. So it's really hard to rate this thing's defense. I mean, if you're hauled down, it's an easy 10 out of 10, but if you're out in the open, it's probably like a 3 out of 10. So for that reason, I'm gonna have to give it a 7 out of 10 for defense. As for survivability, it was able to tank some shots that penned. The 2-stage ammunition setup did help a little bit with that, and the fact that your crew is kind of spaced out also helped with that fact. But most of the time when you survived a pen, it usually took out your cannon breach or half of your crew, so it acted more like a punching bag and less like a sponge. But one thing I do know is the fact that it has way better survivability than any of the Russian tanks in this BR bracket, but I'm still gonna give it a 6 out of 10 for survivability. As for flexibility, it doesn't really have anything going for it. The most flexibility you have is in the 7.62s, and it's not like you can rush either with this armor setup. You are pretty much stuck in the backline sniping or holding lanes. Although if you get down tiers, I was able to rush in a little bit because your armor does kind of hold up when you're placed at 8.7. So I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10 for flexibility. As for features, it does come with a 2-plane stabilizer, a laser rangefinder, commander override, some smoke grenades, and that's kind of about it. Since it is placed at 9.7, you can kind of expect that, although notably it is lacking any form of thermal sights, which isn't the worst in this BR bracket, but it's definitely not cutting edge for features in this BR bracket. So I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10 for features. As for difficulty, it's not hard at all to find a spot and just sit there the entire match. The hardest part probably about this tank is knowing where to fire, because you do have to learn the weak points, because L23 is not the best penning round. It also does take a lot of discipline for the player to just sit back and relax instead of trying to go full forward into it like it's a Call of Duty lobby. So with 1 being the hardest and 10 being the easiest, I'm gonna give this thing a 6 out of 10. As for the fun value, if you're on tier or down tiered, especially if you get into a hull down position, this thing is extremely fun to use, especially because these guys guys can't really pen you, so it's really funny just watching the rounds hit you and do nothing. But if you're up tiered, it's going to be a massive pain because you're outclassed by so much. But overall, it's a decently fun vehicle, especially because Great Britain is still pretty good at 9.7. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10 for fun. As for the worth value, it's not really a premium, so there's not really any benefit to getting this vehicle. I mean, it could be fun, but nothing really about it stands out too much to be like, I need this, it's overpowered. It's kind of just like, oh, this map I got is really good for sniping, let me pick this vehicle. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 for its worth value. This gives the FV an overall score of 57 out of 100. Overall, depending on your playstyle, this thing could be absolutely amazing, or it could be absolutely trash. If you want it to be good, make sure you guys just get hull down and camp.